Several people have asked and I'm finally giving in. I'll make Stollen today. And since I'm already at it, I'll make 3 different kinds of Stollen. Like always in Germany, there are different regions with different recipes for Stollen, and today I will make the Stollen from the town of Dresden. Dresden is a town in the east of Germany. It's called the Dresdner Christstollen and it's quite famous, so I stick to that dough recipe. However, I make 3 different variations. The one Stollen will be just the regular Stollen with the raisins and fruits and all these things. The second Stollen will be with a filling with marzipan, and the third Stollen will be with a filling of poppy seeds. So before I start with the ingredients, like always, the recipe with the quantities is on the blog post. And since I'm making 3 Stollen today, of course I have much larger amounts of all the ingredients. However, I have the recipe for 1 Stollen on the blog, and you can just adjust if you want to make 2 or 3 Stollen like me today. Also, at the end of this video, there will be a link to this recipe. So let's take a look at the ingredients, and it's quite a bit. And I already had to make a preparation last night when I soaked raisins in rum. So you will need raisins and you will need rum, and you have to soak these raisins overnight so that they are really, really well soaked in rum. Okay, so then you need flour, and I've divided my flour in 2 halves because I will first start to make a yeast pre-dough and then later mix in the second half of the flour. You need sugar, you need almond flour, milk, you will need butter, active dry yeast. Then you'll also need something that is called Orangeade and Zitronat in Germany, and here it's called candied or candied, orange peel and lemon peel. So this is what it looks like, and they're available in America too. I brought these from Germany. I still had them. I'm freezing them always, so they last. So this is what it looks like here in America when I go to the grocery. But if you don't have them, or if you want to make them from scratch, here's the video and the recipe. Okay, next you need cardamom, some mace. Then you need cloves, and I've ground cloves, but you can also have the whole cloves and then ground them yourself. Also you need cinnamon and you need salt. Now later when the bread is baked, you will also need some additional sugar to cover the Stollen, and you also need some confectioner's sugar, which is Puderzucker in Germany, as you can read here, powdered sugar. So for the filling of one of these, I have some marzipan, and this is store-bought marzipan, but last year I already made a video how to easily make marzipan from scratch at home, and that video is here. And then I have the filling, the poppy seed filling. And let me show you this a little bit. So this is a filling that I made last night, and it's the same filling that I'm using in the poppy seed cake that I have here. The quantities are different though, so I put the quantities for the filling for this specific Stollen into the recipe of the Stollen. So you can stick to these quantities in this recipe, but do it the way I show you in the video for the poppy seed cake. I'll start by activating the yeast, and for that I'm using some lukewarm milk, and that means that the milk is slightly above room temperature. So if you make your milk or your liquid that you use with the yeast too warm, you will kill the yeast. That's not what you want. So that's why this milk is slightly warm, but not very much. Okay, and I'll wait a little bit until the yeast has been activated. As you can see here, the yeast is active now, it's foaming, and I'll take now 1/2 of my flour, the other half is still here, and I put it in the mixing bowl. And I'm adding 2 teaspoons of the sugar. I'll add the remaining sugar later. And then I also add the milk with the yeast. Now I have to give this a knead, and after 2 minutes of kneading I will add some salt. Okay, so after like 5 minutes, I take the dough out and give it a quick knead by hand. And I had to add a little bit of milk in between because the dough was a little bit too dry, so my flour today that I'm using needed a little more liquid. So just keep in mind that you might run into the same situation. However, be very careful when you add additional liquid. It can soon and quickly be too much. But with the pre-dough, you're a little bit on the safe side, since you can still add a little more flour from the second half of this flour quantity. Now I will cover this and let this ferment for 90 minutes. Now in the meantime I can take care of the spices. So 3 of my spices are already ground, so I don't have to do anything with these. But the cardamom needs to be ground, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm taking the seeds out of them. You can use the entire pot, but I will use only the seeds. And if you use the entire cardamom, you would probably be better off with a coffee grinder or something like that. It's impossible to grind that by hand. So next step. You can see that the dough has increased in size. It's been 90 minutes since I put it aside. I'm removing this here from the bowl, mostly because I need the bowl. I put this aside. And I use the remaining flour now. I'm adding the remaining sugar. Also the almond flour and the spices. Okay. And with a spoon, I mix this all through. Okay. Now, this goes into the machine, and I'm adding the butter. And I'm starting to knead this. And here I have my yeast pre-dough again, and I will just add this to the other dough. And I'm pretty sure someone will ask if you can make this without yeast and with a sourdough. Yes, you can. I had to research it though, and it needs a sweet sourdough starter. I've never heard that before, so I'm not really sure about how that works. If you have an idea, try it, do your best. I only have this recipe and I will stick to it. The scent of the cardamom is quite present here in the room. It smells wonderful. It's the smell of Christmas. And so I'm making 3 Stollen today, as I said earlier. That means that I have to divide my dough because one of these Stollen will not be made with raisins, and I have to separate that part from the remaining dough. So let me weigh how much dough we have. So it's almost exactly 2,100 grams, which means it's 700 grams per Stollen that I'm using here today. So I will try to get this out here so that only 700 is left. You can see that here, but okay, perfect. Let's put this aside. Now it's time to add the raisins and the candied fruits. And I want to mention that some people put some almonds into the Stollen, and if you want to do that, you're using slivered almonds for that, and it would be best to soak them in the rum with the raisins for the last hour or two, so that they really soak up a little bit of the liquid. That would be very delicious. So, however, now I'm adding these ingredients not with the mixer, because if I would do that, the raisins would become mushy from the mixer. So I'm incorporating it by hand. I could have also incorporated the candied fruits with the mixer, since they don't tend to be mushy, but since I'm doing it by hand anyway, I decided to do it like this. Okay. All right. Now the raisins, and I drained the rum. And it's a lot of raisins, but it's supposed to be that much. And those who are watching my videos for a longer time already, they know we all in this family hate raisins when they are baked. But we will have to brave it here in this case. I'm sure we can survive that. Now, I'm pretty sure some people might wonder if they can use something else instead of the rum. And the question is, why do we soak them in rum? And the answer is that we do that to conserve the raisins. So you cannot soak them in water, I think. I would be worried that that would go back, since one of the things about Stollen that is very strange is that you don't eat it fresh like you would usually eat a bread or a cake. So this is supposed to take 1 to 2 weeks before you eat it. And that is the reason why soaking the raisins in rum is probably important, to make sure that this is not going to be bad. Okay. All right. Now let me divide this in 2 portions too, and then I will let it rest for about 50 minutes. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so I've prepared 3 sheets of parchment paper, and I'll put these doughs on separate ones and start with the first of the Stollen. And actually, I don't need to roll this out. I can just use my hands to shape this in a flatter shape like this, and trying to make this rectangular. Okay, and now I'll give this a typical shape of a Stollen, which is like folding it to a third and then folding it from the other third. And then I give it a little bit of a shape with my hands. And by putting this on the parchment paper, when I start to shape it, the benefit of that is that I don't have to move the dough itself to put it on the baking sheet later. So this is actually a wise thing to do, so it won't change its shape or fall apart or anything like that. So now what I'm doing now is I remove all the raisins that are on the top, because they would burn in the oven, and first of all it doesn't taste good, and second of all it doesn't look good. So I remove all those that are sticking out too far. Okay, I think that's good enough. So I set this aside and make my second Stollen. And the second Stollen I will make with some marzipan filling. Okay. I knead it a little bit in my hands. Okay, and I want to make it the length of the Stollen, like this. Yep, that should work. And again, I flip this over. And then I flip this side over. And I probably could have put a little bit of flour here on top. It's a little bit sticky. And again, I'm removing the raisins that stick out. Okay, so this was the second Stollen. Put it next to the first one. And now the last one with the poppy seed filling. Okay, let's use a rolling pin. Okay. So what I could do now would be to put in the raisins into the filling of the poppy seeds. That would be delicious, but as mentioned before, my family doesn't really appreciate any raisins. So that's why I will just use it without. I'll probably not need all of it. Let's see. Oh. Okay. And I flip this again. One more time. And I will shape it. Time to bake the Stollen. So I put these onto the baking sheet, and I can totally put them on the sheet together. That might even help with making sure that the Stollen doesn't spread out. There's a lot of butter in here, which means there's always a chance that this is gonna spread. So I've preheated the oven to 390 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 200 degrees Celsius. And I will bake this now. And after 15 minutes of baking, I will reduce the heat to 300 degrees Celsius, which is 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'll continue to bake this for another 25 to 30 minutes. The overall baking time of 40 minutes has passed, and I'm going to get this now out of the oven. I've let this cool for a while now, and you have to be really careful when you handle this Stollen while it's still warm, because it very easily breaks apart. So what I need to do now is to brush the entire Stollen with liquid butter, and I have to do it all around. So, and here's a little trick that someone told me about, and it's to poke holes into the Stollen to make it more moist. So I will try to do that now. Okay, let's continue this. And I'm not sure, I've never tried this before. I will let you know later if that really helped to keep the Stollen a little more moist. So this butter is supposed to keep it from drying out, and it felt like a little bit counterintuitive to poke holes in there, since, you know, this is with the butter supposed to kind of seal the whole thing. So I will now carefully do the bottom. Okay, so now I need to cover this with sugar. Okay, and so now I let this cool completely, and once it's completely cooled, I will very generously cover the entire Stollen with confectioner's sugar, and in my last step I will wrap it in aluminum foil, and very, very tight, so that no air is coming to it. And yeah, then I have to leave it for at least a week or two, and then it is soaked through with the taste enough to eat it. So most people prefer to have it 2 weeks. Usually I would say 1 week could be enough. However, so this is the bread that we eat in Germany for Advent during December before Christmas. After a week, or even better, after 2 weeks, it's time to cut the Stollen and to enjoy it. So let's take a look what it looks inside. So this is the one with the marzipan, and you see there are lots of raisins here. Here's the marzipan, and it's still very moist. I can see that already. It's not a super dry Stollen, which I like, because if you have a very dry Stollen, the only way to eat it is with a good amount of butter on top. So I like it like this. And yeah, I think the idea with poking holes and before putting the butter on top maybe is really a good idea. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and wait, there's another video coming up just in a bit.